The U.S. agriculture sector and soybean farmers in particular has been caught in the crossfire of Donald Trump's protracted trade battles with China, and recent developments suggest that the damage may be deeper and more lasting than many policymakers acknowledge. Once the largest and most reliable market for American soybeans, China has been steadily re-engineering its soybean supply chain to reduce its reliance on U.S. farmers, a move driven by both the lingering effects of tariffs and Beijing's strategic desire for supply security from alternative partners. Customs data show that in the first half of 2025, China exported about 127,000 tons of soybean oil, already surpassing the full-year total for 2024. This is a striking reversal for a country long known as the world's biggest soybean importer. The surge in exports is partly due to a glut at home, with inventories ballooning 70% since May to 1.12 million tons. Strong biodiesel demand abroad has made soybean oil shipments attractive, particularly to buyers in South Korea, Malaysia, and India. Meanwhile, at home, Chinese crushers have kept operations running at high capacity to produce enough soybean meal, the high-protein animal feed for domestic livestock needs, inadvertently creating a surplus of oil for export. Perhaps more significant for the U.S., China has begun importing soybean meal directly from Argentina for the first time since it approved such purchases in 2019 during the height of Trump's first-term trade war. Argentina's recent reduction in export tariffs has made its soy meal more competitive. But the decision is not purely about economics. As Arlan Suderman, chief commodities economist at StoneX Financial, points out, China's purchases from Argentina send a statement to the U.S. that it's willing to sacrifice its crush capacity to avoid buying U.S. soybeans if Brazil can't fully meet its needs. This means that Beijing is deliberately building new supply channels to bypass the U.S., even if it means disrupting its own domestic processing industry. All of this is happening as Trump himself is publicly urging China to return as a major buyer of U.S. soybeans. On August 11th, just one day before a tariff truce was set to expire, he posted on Truth Social, "China is worried about its shortage of soybeans. I hope China will quickly quadruple its soybean orders." This is also a way of substantially reducing China's trade deficit with the USA. In a surprising move, he also thanked Chinese leader Xi Jinping without explaining the reason for his gratitude. Trump's plea came at a critical moment. U.S. farmers are only weeks from the start of their next harvest, a period when supplies spike, prices often weaken, and producers depend heavily on export demand to keep revenue stable. The irony is that while Trump framed his statement as a show of strength, analysts say there is little sign that China feels any urgency to buy from the U.S. Victor Pistoia, senior grains and oilseeds analyst at Rabobank, noted that China could source its annual supply entirely from South America if necessary, drawing on the combined capacity of Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, and Paraguay. Brazil has already been increasing shipments to China in recent months, and Argentina's soy meal exports offer yet another alternative. Even Chinese market analysts such as Han Verl of Shanghai JC Intelligence acknowledge that the Argentine meal imports are a temporary fix, but they also confirm that the strategy gives Beijing leverage over U.S. suppliers. For American farmers, the consequences of this shift are profound. Soybeans are a cornerstone of U.S. agricultural exports, worth over $12 billion in 2024 alone, and China has historically been their largest customer. The Phase 1 trade agreement during Trump's first term was meant to guarantee bigger Chinese purchases of U.S. farm goods, including soybeans. But Beijing fell well short of those targets, and subsequent tariff escalations deepened the rift. Now, rather than returning to its former buying patterns, China appears to be building a permanent framework to source most, if not all, of its needs from other suppliers. Even the recent uptick in U.S. soybean prices, spurred by Trump's comments and hopes of renewed Chinese orders, may be little more than a temporary market reaction. Chicago soybean futures jumped as much as 2.8% after his Truth Social post, the biggest intraday gain in 4 months. But this rally was driven more by speculative optimism than by concrete purchase commitments from China. The underlying reality remains that U.S. soybeans have been losing competitiveness, and China's diversification efforts are making that trend increasingly irreversible. Beyond the numbers, there is a larger political irony. Trump has long presented tariffs as a weapon to extract better deals for American producers. Yet his trade strategy has inadvertently accelerated China's exit from the U.S. soybean market. By imposing and sustaining duties, he created both the economic incentive and the political motivation for Beijing to seek long-term alternatives. Now, the same president who once touted tariffs as a win for American farmers is openly asking China in language that verges on pleading to buy more U.S. soybeans in order to help those same farmers survive. If Beijing does respond with large purchases, it will likely be for short-term convenience, rather than a sign of renewed dependence. If it doesn't, U.S. agriculture will be left confronting the reality that one of its most important export markets has slipped away, a casualty of policies that were meant to protect it. In either case, the events of 2025 underscore a stark truth. In global agricultural trade, once a customer finds a reliable alternative, it rarely comes back in full force. For U.S. soybean farmers, that may be the most lasting legacy of the Trump-era tariff wars. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. As an independent channel, we don't have corporate backing. We rely on your support to keep going. If you found this video valuable, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below. It really helps more people find our work. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Check out the next video on your screen. We picked it just for you.